Well, Allie Renison is a former UK Trade Department official, now working at the consultancy SEC Newgate. She's been talking to Robin Dwyer about the tariffs that have taken effect.
I think in terms of the tariffs that have come into force today on steel and aluminium, we're already starting to see the price rises being passed on, at least between businesses, from business to business. So people that are sourcing the parts to then actually manufacture. I think in terms of the end impact on kind of consumers and sort of customers, that will probably take a couple of weeks to sort of pass through, particularly for things like cars, where the supply chains are quite complex. But we know that basically businesses have been getting themselves ready for these tariffs and have started to already sort of signal to their customers. We had this sort of CEO of big companies, Walmart and Target, saying that price rises were probably likely in the future.
Well, when it comes to cars, for example, are we going to get into a situation where actually some of these businesses might end up struggling to survive because of these tariffs?
Well, certainly production lines, might they actually grind to a halt? We've heard certainly country leaders from the Canadians to other parts of the world saying that might actually sort of shut down some of the production lines. I think that in terms of actually sort of businesses sort of ceasing operations entirely, that's probably actually unlikely. The question is whether and when they make a decision about do they need to relocate some of their manufacturing elsewhere to sort of be able to compete with the tariffs that are going to be crossing.
When we come to the US and Canada in particular, it's taken on a rather personal tone, hasn't it? How much of this is just grandstanding, if you like, and how much of it is actually well thought out economic policy?
Well, I think a lot of businesses did not take Trump at his word in this sort of on the campaign trail that this is what he really wanted to do, that he wanted to focus on kind of tariff as a revenue source. Now, that's somewhat undermined by the fact that there have been lots of delays. We know that, for example, with the Canadians, that the threats to put additional taxes on electricity exports from Canada to the U.S. And Donald Trump sort of threatening to double the actual sort of price on tariffs coming in on steel for today. Those haven't gone ahead. We know that they're sort of meeting Thursday to negotiate. But it's interesting that actually, the president ultimately has the authority to order the government to actually make these things come into effect. So, he is saying what he's going to do, but there's a little bit of kind of caveating to it.
This is a fluid, evolving sort of situation. Where do you think this might end as we see sort of countermeasure hitting countermeasure?
Well, I think you have to go back to the fact that if Donald Trump is serious about wanting to use tariffs as a genuine revenue source, then this doesn't end. There is a sort of cumulative layer upon layer. We know that the tariffs today on steel and aluminium are only going to be followed by wider reciprocal tariffs supposedly coming into effect on April 2nd. So they don't necessarily end. The question is, where does the retaliation go? And I think that the big uncertainty for business and for consumers is that increasingly this kind of potential trade war is not being limited to tariff retaliation. We're starting to see it on threats to kind of withdraw access to, let's say, the U.S. on procurement markets for other countries. And also we're looking at potential added non-tariff taxes on things like energy. So that's the big uncertainty, is how much wider does this net actually go?